and then we'll get going. So I don't think it's going to be the full 3 hours today. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I'm leaving some extra space at the end to complete activity stuff. So I've got a couple problem meshes sorted out for you. We'll quickly run through what we're going today. We're going to look at problem solving a little bit as well as more complex meshes. Last week we went over all the simple stuff. You should be quite familiar by now with that stuff. But in case you forgot, we'll do a little quick recap. So we started Blender with an empty scene, and most of us were pretty unfamiliar with what was going on in Blender. No problem, that's what we're here for. We're going to learn all this together. I'm going to turn the lights off so you can see better. All right, so by now we should all be pretty familiar with every part of this viewport, from the info panels, the actual viewport itself, our different contexts and menus. So how was the lab? Do you think that guys helped with sort of keeping things in check, remembering things, so we're not totally lost and forgot everything? We're doing all right there?
I thought the lab was pretty good.
That is good. Good to hear. Josiah's great. He'll be able to help throughout as well. So a few basic operations, just quick recap. Middle mouse and shift and scroll to zoom. You guys should remember all this, but it's in the slides again just in case. We have two different modes, being object mode and edit mode. We're going to explore a lot of edit mode today. So last week we really focused on object mode, where you're going to move those objects, putting them in space and getting them in the right place. Today is going to be much more on a vertex level. We're going to move a lot more vertices around. We're going to add a lot more faces. We're going to inset and extrude a lot more than we have been. Shift A to add our primitives, right? So in edit mode, we're dealing with the exact same controls, just in a different context. G to move, R to rotate, S to scale, all of the same stuff. We added these ones in after, and Josiah showed you these more in the lab, being inset and extrude. So you guys use these when you built that speaker with you, which I'm sure is pretty helpful for completing your weekly activities. And you'll have the same kind of opportunity to do your weekly activities with him this week as well. It'll be more complex though, right? We have different edges, faces, and vertices, and ways to select each of them individually. Okay, so just a general question, but how comfortable are you with Blender at the moment? How good do we feel? Generally pretty good. Nobody feels overly stuck or lost or just confused or falling behind?
I did the chisel fairly easily.
Did the chisel fairly easily. Okay, if you have any previous experience, yeah, week one, the assignment one, that chisel will be no problem at all.
I don't really have much previous experience.
Even then. It's a very simple assignment. It'll ramp up. Assignment 2 will take you a lot longer regardless of your experience level. And whereas the first assignment has a finite, definite end, where if you just copy the chisel one-to-one, you can't do anything more than that. That's kind of it. The second assignment is open-ended, so you can be as far in or as shallow as you want with it. Yep.
By the way, I don't think any of the photos for the chisel show like the top of the handle.
Top of the handle? There's one top view there. It's the one where the square is, you can see like just the tip of the square.
Yeah, you see like you can see the tip of the chisel, but you don't see like the other end of the handle.
Yeah, no, I just did the one side. Typically with the orthographics, you don't need to do every single side, just like top, front, right? You don't need to do front and back because in most cases it's identical, especially for a model like that. For the complex models you do next year, you might want to do more views. Okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's just flat. I can't really.
It would be fine. Yeah. All right. So normally what we do with these kind of things is just as a quick intro to the class. If anyone wants me to take a look at their weekly assignment, we can go through it and sort of get an idea of what to go through. I mean, this one's pretty simple. It's literally just different camera views. So I feel like everybody should be on the same page there. But was there anyone who wanted me to go through it in particular and look at theirs? A little competition? There's lots of opportunity for competition. There will be more.
For competition. Actually, could you check out the fog effect a bit and see like how would you make more realistic fog? It's more of like maybe a shader editor thing.
I was going to say I did look at yours, but the issue is that kind of stuff is very Blender specific, so I'm not too familiar. Anything rendering wise like that is more in the Blender specific area, less so the games making stuff. Oops. This is the wrong class. That
I would also say I struggled like really making a good waterfall. It was supposed to be like in a sky island and the waterfall would go down, but I didn't know how to animate the waterfall at the time, so I just left it. Like it's not really
yeah.
as much.
Okay, good to know. That's something we can explore with Josiah later. He wants to take you through making shaders for your first time. So you'll be making things like grass shaders towards the end of the semester, and something like a waterfall shader where what we do is we take an image that tiles in one direction and we scroll the UVs over it. It's a pretty simple effect. That's something Josiah can show you towards the end of the year. But we'll show you how to do it in Engine. So this kind of stuff. Well, actually later in next week's, we're going to talk about compatibility and what here works with game engines and what doesn't.
Actually, I do have a question now that you mentioned grass real quick. I'm aware Blender has the hair feature in particle systems where you can apply models like that. How feasible is that for in games?
Generally speaking, it's not, but it really depends on the model. If you're going for like covering an entire set of terrain with your grass in Blender and exporting it to Unity, that's not going to happen. Each system or each engine is going to have its own system for that kind of thing that's optimized for that kind of thing. So Unity has its own, what they call like decoration and grass rendering system. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Both performance and flexibility, for reasons we'll get into more towards the end of the semester. But just looking at these overall as we kind of scroll through, generally really good. I'm impressed. This first assignment over the last 5 years has always been just a sword specifically, so giving you some flexibility, it seems, has paid off because you've all created some cool stuff. And we got to get, this helps Josiah and I get a good sense of where everybody's kind of at with familiarity with the programs. And everybody did a good job. So the only thing I would really go over is just for the people that were confused on how to present the stuff a little bit better. And that's just by getting rid of the overlays real quick. It's super simple, super easy. And then we'll get on with the content. There you go. So a lot of people would submit something like this, which is fine and dandy. But the one step that we were looking for extra was to just kind of come up here and clean up our view, right? So you can hide specific things. Maybe you want to do the wireframe on. So if I turn the wireframe on, now I can see the wireframe. But if I turn off my overlays, my wireframe's gone. So if I want to show both, what you have to do is kind of go through specifically and uncheck the different bits. So 3D cursor, origin, all right? And now I have a clean view with my wireframe. Cool. And stuff like this, very good. Overall, pretty impressed. So good stuff. All right. With that, you're pretty familiar with the existing tools that we've been sharing. Now we're going to share some more with you, and hopefully by the end of today, you'll have a better repertoire to use. First and foremost, we're going to talk a little bit about add-ons. So this is where things are really going to expand. Blender by default is great. We have a lot of functionality in Blender by default, but there are certain things that are just missing. And there are certain things that are so baked into add-ons that Blender has decided not to implement themselves because the people who make the add-ons already do them so well. I'll give you some examples later. But the first example we're going to go through is a tool called Loop Tools, which we'll take a look at how to install. Right? Add-ons can add different menus, like these ones here. This first one is called Hard Ops. It's a add-on that allows you to model sort of like CAD. The middle one is called UV Pack Masters. So that's not adding a menu, but an entire engine's functionality in the background. It's literally running a software program in the background that helps UV pack your meshes better. And the third one is one called Box Cutter, and it just allows for really quick booleans. I have other examples of all of these ones, but for now, these are just sort of the things that add-ons can do for you. Some speed up your workflow, some add functionality, and some just make life easier. So where do we actually add add-ons like these? We're going to go ahead and add one right now and then get familiar with it. So if we go to the top left Preferences menu, so just from your Blender, underneath Edit, we'll find Preferences, When you pop that open, you'll get a bunch of different options. This is the same place that we changed the max undo step and your keybinds if you don't have a numpad. So in here, you'll find there's two panels. Extensions and add-ons. So this is a little bit of a weird one. This is new to me too. They just added this to Blender recently-ish, but the version of Blender that I've been using basically my entire time has not had the extensions bit. Essentially, what happened is Blender was like, hey, it's kind of hard for people to download these add-ons from all these different places. So what if we just conglomerated them online, and then that way they can auto-update and do things like that. So that's what they implemented. So a lot of the core add-ons that you're going to be using every day, if you go ahead and check, I'm curious to know which ones of these are already installed by default. Is that none? None at all. Okay. A lot of these are very useful, and a lot of them are free to where you don't even need to go to the browser and download them. You literally just type it in. It'll find the repo that they're on and install it as if this is like a Python pip kind of thing. So super useful. If we go to extensions, the first one I'm going to have you guys install is Loop Tools. So we had to type Loop Tools in that search extensions bit. The hardest part of this is just knowing what the name of the extension you're looking for is. Everything else is super easy. So I'd recommend starting with this Loop Tools. And once you go ahead and install that, you'll see it'll pop up in the installed category, and then you have Loop Tools installed. This is for web add-ons only, I should mention. If you know of a specific add-on, let's say, do I have any examples? So I have an add-on called Text Tools, and you'll see it's not showing up here. There is no Text Tools or Textile Density Checker in this list. It's because its repo is not supported by the online. So that's the current difference, quote unquote, between add-ons and extensions. Our extensions are supported through Blender's web service, and add-ons are not. So you have to install those yourself. This is a lot. I'm rambling on, but if you've got Loop Tools, then we're good to move on to the next step. Another one that I'd recommend that's kind of built in is F2. If you go ahead and click F2 and install it, what it does is when you make a new face, let's say you select 4 vertices and press F to make a face, you can actually chain a bunch of them together and just hold the F key instead of selecting and then picking and then selecting and then adding F. If that doesn't make sense to you, we'll explore what the F key does later. F2 is another one. If you're in that menu anyway, you might as well install it. Okay.
So how do I get to the add-ons?
In Edit and then Preferences. So just pop into the top left, Edit, Preferences, and then under, there's add-ons and extensions. So add-ons you have to install yourself. Extensions, you'll find all the web-supported ones.
Okay.
All right, so if you go here, you'll see Allow Online Access. I'm just going to click Allow.
Yep.
And then it will find all of these tools. Great.
Which were the ones that we're supposed to download?
I would recommend Loop Tools. So Loop Tools is the one I've got here. And F2 is another one. So if I go F2, see it pops up. Super simple to install.
Yep.
Got an error.
So there's apparently an alert that says repository extensions.blender.org remote data unavailable. Save with remote repository.
Double check your internet connection. And then beyond that, I'm not entirely sure. Is anybody else getting errors, or is it all
Connection is fine.
getting errors? So if you are getting errors, it's probably just a quirk of this being very new for Blender. What you can do is just type in Loop Tools add-on, and you'll find it under Blender Extensions, and you can install it the old-fashioned way, which is to grab this. Whoops. And I'll just drag this into Blender, and it'll do its best to install it. And if even that fails, you can go to Download, which will download a zip file, which you can then store wherever you want. Go to Preferences, Add-ons, and install it from here. But hopefully, ideally, you don't have to go through all those steps.
It's still gonna work for me.
All right, so if I go under this little drop down, you see Install from Disk, and then I can install it straight from the zip. You don't have to unpack it. Yeah, so your extension's not working through the online portion, do that bit. Go download it and then install
Yeah,
it.
it's still safe. It still doesn't work.
Even if you download it as a zip file?
No, not the zip file. I mean the drag and drop thing.
Yeah, if that doesn't work either, then try downloading it as a zip tool. That's like the final, last kind of stand option. Okay, so these come from the Blender Extensions website. It's automatically linked, but there is an actual website you can visit too. You can find additional add-ons that may be of interest to you, or you can find themes. Who doesn't love themes? You can change your Blender to look different kinds of ways. Maybe you want it to be blue. Maybe you like light mode for some sick reason. You can go ahead and download them there. How do we actually access our add-ons? Well, there's a variety of different ways, but to get you started, we're going to use Loop Tools, which is super simple. Loop Tools pops up in the right-click context menu when you're in edit mode. So a little bit deep, but all it is essentially is that as long as you're in edit mode, if you right-click, you'll find Loop Tools, and you see I have it installed twice because I just showed you how to install it a second time, but it'll work both times. And Loop Tools comes with a variety of different features, but there's only two that you'll really be using most of the time. The one that it's known for, first and foremost, is the circle tool. So you'll find that there's a lot of times where you want to work with cubes because cubes are super simple, but then you find you need some kind of circular detail. Well, that's where the circle tool comes in. So if you right-click under Loop Tools, you'll find circle, and it'll take any selection of edges and turn them into a circle. When would something like this be useful? Basically all the time. But a huge reason is so that you can work simpler. Okay. You guys are pretty good with this so far, so I'm honestly not too worried about it. But a big problem that sort of pops up with this class a lot is people start diving into incredibly high vertice counts right away. We're adding and adding and adding because we want our shapes to be super duper round. That's fine and all, but it becomes incredibly hard to work with the more we add. Yep.
Like I'm using the circle thing and nothing's happening.
I'll show you what you need to select to make it work in a second. You need to have a certain number of, if you use it on 4 sides, obviously it can't become a circle.
One face.
One face, then that face is going to need more vertices around the edges to support it. Just like this one. So if I had a cylinder and I'm working on it, imagine this is some complex model, and I've got this section that needs more than 8. Maybe this part of the mesh is going to be bigger than I anticipated, and 8 sides isn't enough to hold the silhouette. Right? If I'm seeing this in game, I'm like, that's not enough sides if that's supposed to be something round. What can we do? Normally, with the cylinders, you have to make a new cylinder to increase the number of faces, but that's not really an option here. What we can do is subdivide our existing mesh. This way we've worked with just 8 faces the whole time. Super simple to do the block out. And then we subdivide those edges, which still, we're looking like an octagon. The circle tool lets us then turn that into a circle. So that way we can work from something as blocky as this and quickly move into something more circular without needing to worry about all these extra edges or subdivision modifiers or anything like that. So how do we actually use something like this? If I go ahead and start with this face, right now I've got 4 vertices. You cannot turn 4 vertices into a circle. As hard as you try, it's not going to happen. So circle is not adding geometry, it is just moving the geometry that you already have. So how can we make this more circular? Well, we learned about Control R, which adds edge loops. And we can use Control R to add a loop to each side to our cube, just like this. And now if we select these faces, we can use inset, which we learned about, just to inset this bit. And I want you to remember this pattern as best you can. This pattern allows us to isolate detail in the areas that we need it. So we have these outside bits that are 2 faces going each way. In the inside bit, we've got 4 faces. So there's a lot more geometry in this inner part. You'll also notice that if we count the number of vertices around the edge, which if you don't want to count them like with your eyes, you can just go down here. If you right click on the bar, there's an option for scene statistics. This will tell you very useful information all the time. How many triangles, how many edges you have selected. So we can right click, add scene statistics, and you can see right here I've got 8 vertices selected. You guys all took computer graphics, so what kind of numbers do our computers really like to work with? Ones and zeros at a very low level? Yes, they absolutely love ones and zeros. Lucas?
Sorry, we're now taking computer graphics.
You are now taking computer
The
graphics.
majority here is second year.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. That makes more sense. So the answer is numbers in the power of 2. They work very well with computers. So that would be numbers like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. That's why you hear these numbers over and over in game dev. The computers really like these numbers. Our textures should hit those numbers. Our anything else that we're really doing in the computer should hit those numbers. Because of this, it's also really easy for us to work with those kinds of numbers in programs like this, when making things like circles, for example. So here we've got our 8-sided mesh, our 8 verticed square, and this is a perfect candidate for using loop tools to turn into a circle. So if we just select these faces, which selects all of the edges here, we can hit loop tools, circle, and now we've got a circle where our square was. Right? If I bridge these together real quick, so I can use loop tools bridge, and what that's going to do is take this set of faces, and if I shift select this set of faces, so I've got both of them selected, bridge will allow me to essentially create a bridge between the two. So you'll see it deletes that exterior face and creates a bunch of interior faces to bridge those two shapes together. So this is an easy way to punch holes in things. Jason?
How did you get it at the bottom as well? Did you just do it separately on both sides?
I kind of cheated. I have an add-on that lets me mirror things really quickly that we'll explore later. But it would be a similar process. What I would do is I would delete these faces if I wasn't going to use any add-ons. Grab all these ones, turn on that snapping to vertex, right? So now if I duplicate this face, right, I have a second version of this, I can just snap it on the z-axis like we explored last time, right to the bottom. And then I can merge by distance. You guys don't know about merge by distance yet? That's a problem-solving thing that we'll go over in a bit.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Have you posted the slides?
I've not posted the slides yet.
Okay.
They will come up shortly, though, because I'm going to have you guys work on something. Okay, so yeah, loop tools, circle, loop tools, bridge. All right, quickly punch a hole in something. Right, and like I said, if we wanted more of a circular hole now, it's very easy to just quickly subdivide this. And we'll make a smoother circle out of this. Right? So I can start working low and then work my way up. This is very important when we get into Booleans later because you have to clean up your geometry quite frequently. And the less time that you spend going and clicking this, and this, and this, and this, the better, right? That's the cleanup for later. Right now, we don't need to do that. So some examples of other add-ons that you might be interested in. I kind of mentioned them briefly earlier, but there's one called Box Cutter. This lets you really quick. I don't have any of them installed in my laptop, otherwise I'd show you. Box Cutter creates fast, easy Booleans. This one, actually, I might have installed. Nope. There's one called HardOps. HardOps lets you work more like a CAD software. So if you're familiar with something like Fusion 360 and you want to work in Blender in that fashion, then something like HardOps might be for you. Yep.
Box Cutter is not showing up in the skin extensions.
None of these are free. These are paid. Yeah, I've mentioned that. These are paid add-ons. So these are the ones that sort of really extend Blender's functionality. They won't be on that thing I showed you earlier. You'll have to go hunt them down on Gumroad or something if you're interested. Right? Right now you don't, but eventually if you want to do this, you might get to that stage. Mesh Machine is another one. You won't need any of these for the course. This is just for like future stuff. It's Mesh Machine. That won't be in there either. I bought it a long time ago. Mesh Machine also lets you undo bevels though. If you were going to get one of any of these, I'd recommend making it Mesh Machine, because then if you accidentally mess up a bevel, you can undo it, which should be in default Blender, but isn't. All right, so that's the quick aside on add-ons. You can explore add-ons on your own and sort of download and play with whatever ones you want. I just needed you to install loop tools to be able to do like the weekly activities and stuff.
Question.
Yep.
Wait, you access
All good?
by cube invisible.
Oh, okay. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. Could be Alt-H or could be slash.
Then help me come up, like, try to do quick in order to
No worries.
20 minutes.
Everything gets recorded, so it'll be there after the class. All right, so last week we did something like this. A very simple cup. Now this shape is not very complicated. It's just a cylinder and then a handle extruded out of it and connected, right? Pretty simple. Yep.
Sorry, I'm trying to do something you did earlier, but I feel it's a plugin. So I'm trying to make like a cylinder in the middle, but with more resolution. But every time I subdivide it, it's giving me 4 faces and not just the tube. So how do you subdivide it to like just make vertically cuts? Like
It did give me the 4. I deleted the one in the middle. I'll explore that in a bit too. So last week we made this simple mesh, or you guys made simple meshes of your own. But this week we're going to explore how we can break down more complex shapes, props, and start building things up. These pieces are a lot easier to tackle when we look individually at different sections one at a time. Typically something that's complicated is connecting meshes all the way throughout, so having one cohesive topology sound correct mesh. Not something we necessarily need to do for games, so it's not as difficult because we can break things up. All of these different meshes don't need to connect in order to look proper in the game. So real quickly here, I've highlighted the different sections of the object, right? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of different pieces. I just found this wrench online, super simple. You can find something similar, and we'll get into that for sort of the weekly activity stuff, but each one of these different colors is going to represent a different object in my scene, a different mesh. I don't need all of these different pieces to be connected, because if they're connected, right, then we're going to have very complex topology problems in areas where we've got very round corners connecting with very sharp corners, right? All of these extra vertices need somewhere to go. I would have to take them and extend them throughout this piece and that piece, which is possible for sure, but takes a long time. And we don't have that much time. Remember, I want you to be able to build huge environments as individual people or teams of 2. There's one more optimization we could make to a mesh like this. If I'm saying that not every piece needs to be connected, does anyone see anything else that we can separate? Where could I paint in one more color to separate it, but still sort of hold everything together?
could you suddenly separate the head from the little bottom part?
Like the red bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you imagine that this is a solid piece continuing through the mesh, all of the geometry inside of there, that red part, right, you wouldn't see it at all. It's not real. We're envisioning it like this because this is how it's made in real life. Every different piece would be a different object on our mesh. But we don't need everything that's inside of there, that steel part that would run through. So we can even separate, and I could have colored this a different piece. The only reason I didn't is because there isn't really a change in topology. We would just make it as one piece and then cut the parts that are invisible down later. Okay? But to make these more complex shapes, even though they're being broken down to simplify them, they're still more complex, we need some extra tools. So I'm going to introduce you to a few new ones. We've got B for beveling, K for the knife tool, and F for making faces. So these 3 are all additive. Each one of these is going to add new faces to your object, to your mesh. Okay? Additive. Keep that in mind, because these are our destructive operations. And I forgot to change the title for bevel. So it says X bevel. It actually is supposed to say delete. X is how you delete. But we don't just have one type of deleting, we have multiple. And the one you're going to be using probably the most is this one in the middle here, Control X. and that is dissolve. Can anybody guess what dissolve might do? Yep.
Like delete something?
It does delete a thing, but in a specific way. Ethan?
It'll like cleanly remove parts that you've selected. So like if you try and dissolve a face that's connected to the other face, it'll keep like the other vertices that are connected to that face, and it'll just remove the face itself.
Yeah, exactly. So the key is that the faces aren't interrupted when you delete the parts in between. So what do I mean by that? If you look here, we would have a vertex here, here, and here. If you were to delete this vertex or that vertex, both of these faces would collapse because they'd be missing their fourth vertex. Using dissolve, we get rid of the in-between, but we don't destroy the other faces. It knows enough to calculate how to maintain the overall face. So you're going to be using Control X a lot. And the last one that you're also going to be using a lot is P, to separate. So there are a lot of times when we're modeling that we want to model it as one mesh at the beginning because that makes it super easy to get some kind of silhouette bit right. So if we take this one again for an example, I want this handle to be built off of the structure of that bottom part. So we'll model that one big piece clean through the red bit. And we can select just some faces from here to here and hit P, and then we have a totally separate mesh made that's at the exact same angles as the red part. We'll go over some examples in a minute that make more sense, but P is another one of them that you're going to be using very often, right? It turns one part of a mesh into a separate object. One more complex bit that you need to create these complex shapes. Shading options. So you will learn a ton about this in CG. You will learn the entire shading lighting model equation. It's a good thing I did not start with it because I thought you guys already took it. But basically you have a lighting angle and a face angle, and then you have your viewing angle. There's 3 angles. I don't have chalk. I can't draw it. All right. You'll see this graph later during CG as well. But we have 3 main angles. We have the angle that the light source is hitting our face at. We have the face normal, and we have the angle that our viewing is happening at. So for every face, this is happening. Right? This is fine. But what it means is that where we have 2 distinct faces, so this face here and this face here, we're going to get a complete change in the way that it's shaded, which is what you're seeing here. So every single face, the entire face, has a particular shading. So what happens when we shade smooth? When we shade smooth, it's called blend Fong, you'll learn about it soon. We're averaging out between all of these faces. Okay, we're going to take this neighboring face, this neighboring face, this neighboring face, and we're going to average out all of these components. What we end up with is a much smoother looking object. I have not added any geometry. There's no extra geometry here, right? So this is how we fake those high details without them actually existing. Because if you had to add that much geometry to make things look that smooth, all of our computers would crash all the time, okay? So if there's one thing you're going to take away from this class, it's remember to shade smooth the parts on your mesh that need to be smooth. Otherwise, I will be very disappointed because it is probably the fastest way to make a good model look terrible. For example, I made this little object here just to demonstrate. I've got flat shading, smooth shading, and then a combination of both flat and smooth shading. If we shade everything flat, we get all of this faceting. We don't want faceting. Boo. If we shade smooth, we're averaging out between these 90-degree bends, which means we're getting the bottom of a face and the side of a face and blending between them, which is why it starts looking so incredibly weird in those areas. Not great. What we need is a combination of both. And there are a plethora of different ways to do this, so I'm going to demonstrate with a couple. We'll just quickly rebuild that shape. Don't mind me doing this bit. It's not that important. Right, so we just have a part that's, let's say, maybe it's round on top, and then smooth on the bottom. Okay. When we're shading smooth, right, so if I right click, we have shade smooth, shade auto smooth, and shade flat. This is an object level operation. So we've talked about edit versus object mode, right? For shading models, you need to be in object mode. So in object mode, we can pick shade smooth, shade auto smooth, or shade flat. When you pick shade auto smooth, what's happening is it's going to create what's called smoothing groups. And smoothing groups are sets of faces where it will smooth, right? So we have, yep, Lucas.
Sorry, just can you create your own like smooth groups?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna explore that in a second.
Sorry.
No worries. I want you to ask questions whenever you have them. I'll just tell you if I'm gonna explain it later. So what we have here is an edge that's pretty sharp. It's at 90 degrees. When we auto smooth, you see it's adding this modifier, this geometry node stack here. And we have a couple options. We have ignore sharpness, manage bake, blah, 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 blah. The only one you should worry about right now is angle. So under angle, right now it's set to 30 degrees. And this is pretty simple. It means that any angle greater than 30 degrees, like this one here, right? This angle is greater than 30 degrees between two different faces. It's going to mark that sharp. Okay? But you'll notice the angle here between these faces on the sides, this is less than 30 degrees. So it's just going to shade that smooth. Okay? And if I change this, let's say I bump this up to 91. Now it doesn't care that this edge is 90 because it's still underneath the threshold here. Okay? There's another way to do it. So this is the automatic way, but it doesn't always work. Maybe sometimes you want edges that are sharp that are, you know, less than 30, but you want this set to 30. We can create individual smoothing elements by selecting an edge between two faces that we want to make sharp, right? So we know that this edge we want to be sharp. Under our info panel, or not our info panel, sorry, you can right click, and if you scroll down here, you will find mark sharp, right? And so that's going to tell Blender, hey, between these two faces, right, we're going to mark sharp, right? Between these two faces, we're going to shade smooth, everywhere else, sharp. So we do it here, sharp. And if I do it to all of these edges, you'll notice that our mesh will look identical to how it was the other way. Okay? It's pretty simple. This is all data that will export as well. If you're working for some reason on, let's say, like a PS1 model or PS2, maybe you're making like, maybe you take retro games and you're working on something for old hardware. This kind of stuff generally wasn't as supported back then. So our trick was we'd actually separate each edge. This is just another way to do it. But before exporting the mesh, we'd separate each edge. And if I unmark all the sharp here, clear sharp, right? You see it's still maintaining each smoothing group because it can only shade within its own mesh, right? So this is now a separate object because we separated it, it can't. So this is the cheapest way to do it because you don't need to specify any extra information. But these days it's mostly relegated to just working on our old hardware, okay? If you ever download, maybe you do game rips or whatever, and you download old OBJs from different games, you'll probably see the meshes broken up like this. That's why. Okay, so if you're ever wondering, that's why. Does everybody kind of grasp the shading model stuff? What's going on there? No? A little bit lost? What part needs more explanation?
Yes. I'm just tired though.
Too far back? We can go over some more examples when we move on a little bit to the next portion. there's a lot to cover today, and then I'll spend a lot more time working through the different elements when we get to like the hands-on stuff towards the end. Okay. So we have all this additional information about smoothing groups, about making our meshes look nice and making complex shapes. How do we actually do that? Well, the next skill you need to develop is going to be problem solving. So problem solving in 3D is pretty simple. I promise you it's not complicated. As long as you follow these steps that are going to be outlined, and this is where I'm going to share the slides because I want you to see these and be able to follow along with these whenever. If you follow these steps, I promise you 90% of your problems will be solved immediately. It's really that simple. Anything beyond that, you might have to dig a little bit, but if you do these 3 things, you'll solve most of your issues. Okay, here are your 3 steps to problem solving. 1 is applying scale and rotation. So last week we talked a little bit about scale and what can happen to all of your different things if things aren't made to scale or rotation. Right? When Blender is doing its calculations, it's using actual real measurements. So if your scale is set to like 5 times what the object actually is, then your add-ons or your modifiers are not going to do what they're expected to do. The second one is flipped normals. So sometimes these normals that I talked about in that MS Paint drawing get flipped around backwards. And when that happens, your mesh won't render properly in Engine. We can also see this, it turns red in Blender when we turn on the flip normal option. Okay? So we can fix that by pressing Shift-N. Shift-N will recalculate our normals to the outside. And then last is if you have problems, chances are you need to go into edit mode, select your whole mesh with A, and then hit M to bring up the merge menu. And we can merge by distance to basically fix 99% of our problems. So what happens is sometimes we have vertices that are pretty close together and we think they're together, but they're not. And it starts breaking. We get disconnected edges, disconnected faces, huge problems. Though you might not understand the reasoning for all of these things just yet, do this every single time. Look at the slides, memorize these steps. Josiah will go over these steps with you again in the lab because you're going to be doing this anytime you run into an issue. What do these issues look like? Well, sometimes you might have interior faces. Right? If you have a face on the inside, 1, it's wasting UV space, it's wasting draw space and time, and it's just causing problems generally. If you tried to bevel this, it would cause a nightmare. The solution is to delete the inside face. This one's pretty self-explanatory, right? We don't need faces on the insides of our meshes. Okay. Scenario 2 is flip normals. We need to be able to see the normals. So what you should do every time you open a file is go up here to your overlays, and just check off the box that says face orientation. So if I quickly just make something backwards, you'll see it shows up in red. And this is how we know that when we export this to Engine, it will not appear as it's intended to.
Could you also use the backface culling?
You can also use backface culling, but I find this to be a lot easier to spot because it's bright red. Yes.
How did you turn that on?
Under overlays, so if we go up here to the overlays drop down, and then it's called face orientation. So when I have it turned off, you'll see everything looks fine, and I might start going like, oh, everything looks fine. Maybe I'll add like a modifier to it. And then you'll notice, oh, why is my mesh being destroyed? Right? I have no idea why my mesh is being destroyed. We quickly go through the process. So I can hit Control A, apply my scale. That didn't fix the problem. Go into edit mode and flip my normals. Select everything and hit Shift N. Oh, my modifier is fixed, right? Because my face was backwards. So if we turn this back on, we can see what's causing the issue. Okay. Another situation that sometimes comes up is you have loose vertices floating around. This is pretty common. Maybe you extrude something and then you accidentally leave it there and didn't realize. You can delete the loose vert by using this little trick. If I was to come in here and somehow delete this edge, and now I've just got this vertice floating around. If I search for select loose, you'll see there's a thing to select loose geometry, and this selects anything that's floating out. So if I make like an accidental edge that's just floating out in space, select loose geometry, it'll select that for me, and I can get rid of it. The next most common scenario is fake faces. So if we're starting to build up a shape, let's say we're building up this shape and I want to connect this edge to this edge. Sometimes you might accidentally hit F instead of J without thinking, and you'll end up with a fake face. Again, hard to see when you don't have the face orientation on. But I've now got an extra face in this spot. So if I click, you'll see I'm kind of selecting through the different faces, right? We need to know to delete those faces. And usually the solution is to delete the faces and rebuild everything. So if we rebuild here, we can select, press F. Okay. So we can delete our faces, delete our hanging bits, and then rebuild. Another common issue is gapped vertices, one you might not see, but again, is something you'll fix naturally when you go through those 3 steps. So we can use snapping, or we can select everything and use the merge by distance. Sometimes you'll find they're not close enough to merge by distance, and that's when you're going to use the snapping to fix that issue. This is a lot. I mostly put these in the slides not to have you remember right now, but so that when you run into any issue, you can look back at the slides and go, oh, that's my problem. One of these things should help me fix it. All right. The last scenario, the one I hope you don't run into, bad topology. If you somehow mess up your mesh as bad as this one, start over. Not the answer you want to hear, but oftentimes the correct course of action. A lot of this stuff, if it gets too complicated as far as breaking things goes, you're kind of in trouble. I explicitly subdivided this like 13 times and then grabbed a few sections and moved them as far away as possible. So getting it to this point is pretty hard. Don't think you'll run into it, but if you ever do, consider restarting. Okay. Another common scenario is going to be those strange bevels. So if we bevel something and we end up with like something like this, right? Our bevel should normally average out between our 2 curves. This means that it's calculating on our scaled mesh. So our mesh is probably scaled sometime that's not 0. By applying our scale with Control A, we can fix that too, right? So here's a quick exercise that I want to go through, and then we'll explore more creating complex shapes kind of live as I'll go through it. This is sort of the end of where the slides bit go. I've got an exercise for you. It's on Canvas. We'll do it for just a little while here. Probably like, what is it? 6 o'clock. So if we do this for like 20-ish minutes, then we can take a quick break and then come back and finish everything off. So I'll publish this bit and then we'll kind of go through it together-ish. So if you download that and you're using version 4 or higher, you should be able to open it, no problem. Can everybody see it on Canvas? Pipe wrench broken .blend should be there. Okay. So if you open it, you'll see something like this. Looks like a normal pipe wrench, but it is in fact super broken. So what I'd recommend you do right away is just go over here to the Layout tab. This is set up for UVs and stuff, but I'm not going to worry about that. We're just going to look at the actual mesh itself. So, I'll leave it there for you to do on your own, but I feel like if we work through it together, we can get a good idea of how to fix these different issues and how to spot them. Anybody want to take a crack at what I should do first? Yep.
You want to select it and merge the vertices, or merge the distance?
This is the first thing I should do. So you notice I have a bunch of different parts. I can just select all of them, select everything, merge by distance. Okay, and you'll see down here at the bottom, there's this little pop-up. It says removed 38 vertices. So that means there were 38 overlapping verts that we may or may not have fixed. What's my next step? Lucas?
I would firstly check the normal to see if there's any flip ones.
Let's check the normal. Yep.
Hold on, which menu did you just go to check how many vertices you actually removed?
That was the console. So it's just a little pop-up down in the bottom. So if I undo that and then redo it, down here in the bottom, there's a little pop-up.
Oh.
If you just double-click it, it just opens the console. Okay, so next, Lucas has told me that I should turn on the overlays to check for face orientation. And, well, would you look at that? We've got some issues, right? All of the faces that are red should be blue. This is an older version of Blender where I made this file, so that's why the faces are blue instead of gray. You can change that if you want, but the blue is essentially the same thing. It means good. Right? So the solution to this is to select our bits that are red, hit Shift-N, and 9 times out of 10 that'll make them blue. If you need to do it to specific faces, you can as well. Okay, let's take a peek at this one. I'm going to do the same thing, select these, and make them face outside. Yep.
So what if you don't choose like the red part, like you choose like every single vertex in that object?
If you choose everything, it sort of averages it out and tries to guess which part of the object is supposed to be the outside. It's not always right, but it does its best.
And then yeah, what would that just remove the red part away,
Yeah, it should remove the red part away most of the time. If it doesn't remove the red part, then what you can do is hit Alt-N, and you can specifically calculate it whichever way you'd like. So I can hit flip, and it'll flip it and turn it red. Alt-N, I can recalculate for outside. So if you're having problems with individual faces, which does happen now and then, that's how you solve that. Any other glaring issues? And then I'll have you kind of go off on your own and explore and see what else you can find. If you have it open in front of you, it'll be easier to spot the issues.
There's further down the handle and rotates to the front. Well, first of all, there's that. Second of all, there's that. Two holes in the.
What do we think is going on here? Shift V. Oh, Shift Z. Yeah, you can switch to wireframe mode for sure, and that'll give you a good idea of what's going on. So now that we're in wireframe mode, what are we seeing in there? Giant triangle. So this happens super commonly. You'll be working on a face like this. You'll click a vertice. You'll have snapping on without realizing it, and you'll just snap a vert somewhere inadvertently while you're working on something else. And then it's too late to undo it by the time you realize. This is one of those ones where the solution is going to be to rebuild the face. So I'll show you this new little bit here. We can actually hide faces without deleting them. So getting in here and clicking on the actual faces is going to be hard in wireframe mode. We can select a section and hit H, and it's going to hide those faces. They still exist, but we can't click on them or see them anymore. This is going to make it really easy to get in here and destroy those interior faces. So we'll just come in, hit X to delete, faces. Right? Same with these, faces. Now we're looking clean inside. In Blender, when we're dealing with operations, oftentimes the answer to doing the opposite is to hit Alt. So if we get Alt-H here, it's going to unhide all of the faces that we hid. They're still there. We didn't delete them, we just hid them, as if you're hiding an object in Unity, right? Yep, you can hide the big faces on the front and then go delete the inside, right? That leaves us with this hole, and we can rebuild this by using extruding. We can extrude this down, and then we can make a new face. If we select 4 verts and press F, new face. Select 4 verts, press F. Select 4 verts, press F. Okay. Anybody else seeing any problems with this mesh? Yep.
Something on the top that I don't know, except like you can see the vertices on the big like if you go on to object mode,
Yep.
you can see that they have like lines on it that shouldn't be there.
Yep. So another one of those common issues that I outlined in the slides. All of the problems that are on this mesh I outlined in the slides specifically. But if we take a look here, we see that in object mode, even though I don't have wireframe mode on, I can see these edges, right? And that's not normal. You shouldn't be able to see those edges. So what's actually happening here, and this one's a little bit trickier to diagnose, but we know that the problem is in this area. If we go into face mode, we can start selecting these faces to see which one has the issue. But when I press, it doesn't select what we think it's going to select. Right? I talked to you earlier about fake faces. So this is one of those situations where we've accidentally joined an edge, but we didn't actually create a face the way we thought we did. So if I delete these edges, they're not actually connected to those faces. They're just hanging. Right? Now the selection looks like it should. So we can come in here now and just delete that face, leave our edges where they are, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to rebuild using the geometry that's left over. So now if we rebuild with F, it's going to connect those faces. This is one of those situations where I would normally have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, press F. 1, 2, 3, 4, press F. 1, 2, 3, 4, press F. If you installed F2, like I kind of mentioned earlier, what you do is just press F and hold, and it just fills in that direction. So we can use F2 there, fill it in real quick, right? And then we're going to do the same thing to the other side.
How do you use F2, sorry?
Just press and hold. As long as you have an edge loop to continue making faces for, it will just keep going. And it goes in the direction of your mouse. So in this case, it sees these 2 edge loops, and it knows that if we press F, it just wants to make a face in that direction. We can do it to the other side real quick. Face, 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 face. All right, there are 2 more issues with this mesh. 2 more issues. Any ideas? Ethan?
The gear on the side isn't being shaded smooth.
The gear on the side is not shaded smooth. So this is very clearly, obviously, supposed to be round. We've got 16 faces, right? But right now it doesn't look round at all. It looks super jaggedy, and that's no good for anybody. So we just learned the fix to that. We're going to select it in object mode, right-click, and for something like this, where it's very simple, using an auto smooth is all we need to do, right? And now we've got nice, smooth, round parts and sharp edges where those round parts meet the flat parts. Lucas?
So I don't know if that is something you put on purpose or not, but if you go to the color range and you see the little T-block shape, you're going to see there's too many, no, the bottom one.
This one.
You're going to see there's too many edges that are necessary, and you could like remove them and just make a single place.
You're right. I did that everywhere. There are a ton of extra edge loops that don't actually do anything. When we're modeling for games, we're just working with the silhouette. We want to create the silhouette of a shape. So edge loops like these that don't affect the silhouette at all, right? I can take a look at it from any angle, and they won't change how we perceive it. We don't need them. They're just wasting resources. We can get rid of them. We have similar issue here, right? All these extra edge loops are unnecessary. So I'm using Alt and Shift to select these edge loops. We go into screencast, right? So if we click normally, we can click one edge at a time. If we hit Alt and Shift, we can select not one, but multiple edge loops. So Alt selects the edge loop, Alt and Shift lets you select multiple. So I can take these 4. If I delete them, right, it's going to collapse those faces on the outside. So if we hit Control X, it's going to dissolve them. This is why dissolve is going to be your #1 friend here. Maintain your faces. These 2, right? We can see when we delete them, we're not really affecting our silhouette. Gone. All of these ones, not affecting the silhouette. Select, select, select. Delete, right? What do I mean by selecting silhouette, affecting silhouette? Well, if I delete this one, the actual shape of our mesh is changing. So this edge is actually holding our form. Anything that's holding our form we want to leave. So we can leave this edge in, right? So now we've optimized by getting rid of all those extra edges. Yep.
Sorry, how do we select the whole edge at once again?
The whole edge using Alt. So Alt will select one edge loop all the way around. And then you hit Shift and Alt to select multiple, just like you're shift selecting anything else. Okay. Does that make sense for everyone? Generally speaking? So most of those problems were solved just by going through those 3 steps. That's all you really need to do. That'll solve most of your problems. But hopefully by going through those few examples of issues that won't be fixed by these steps, it'll help you not get stuck when you're working on your future models. With that, we could probably take like a 10-15 minute break here and then come back to it. And then to finish off, I'm going to go ahead and run you through this wrench model. And that'll give you a good idea for your second weekly activity, which also should be live now. We can take a look at it in case you feel like working over your break instead. It should be live now. I always set them to 5 o'clock, so it should just automatically become visible. So this week's weekly activity is the exact same as last week, just slightly more complex. So we're looking for slightly more complex shapes. Pick whatever you would like to model as long as it has multiple components to it. Okay? Your submission for everything else is the same. So some kind of perspective shots, some kind of orthographic shots. The last bit for this submission is you'll notice I've got these different colors on the different parts of the object. The way that was done, if you go to your shading models here, you can set the color to random. So please do this for submission. Go to viewport shading, color, random. By saying it's a random, every different object is going to get a different color. It's based on the name of the object. Just totally randomly generated based on the name of the object. By doing this, it'll help me understand and see where you're breaking your mesh up. So please submit like this, just like I have as in the example. And that way I can get a good sense of how you're breaking things up and I can give you direction need be. Okay? Something like a wrench would be a pretty good example. Again, I'm going to go through making this one with you right now. Or if you have something else you'd like to model that's complex and broken into different pieces, you can do that for the weekly as well.
Marcus, can I give a tip for the whole class that I think would be useful for those who are using Blender? If you want to be able to easily find your models when you're working, because sometimes you open the Explorer, just the Blender logo and the name. Go to Edit, Preference, go to File Tab, go to System, and then Register. Every time you open the File Explorer, it's actually going to show you a preview of your Blender file.
That can be helpful. I thought it did that by default. I guess mine don't. Some of them do. It does on my other computer. But yes. I've never heard of that before. I wasn't super aware, to be honest. Usually, I just name my files however, and then it kind of goes from there.
It's just useful if you like the
Yeah. I'll give you some, when we get to the environment stuff, I'll talk about file structure and things like that, because all of your models should be in the same file anyway, for reasons we'll talk about later, but that is neat, so. Gotcha. Cool. Okay, so I'll take a pause here, and then we'll get into sort of like the example stuff. All right, so 6:30, we'll get back into it. That was it for the content bombing portion of that, all of the information that is way too much for you to comprehend in one go, but I mostly wanted to give it to you now so you have somewhere to look in the future when you're trying to learn more about this stuff, right? I didn't expect you to sort of follow along, thought I'd just specify. Didn't expect you to pick up on all of that right away. I'm gonna now go through and model that wrench with you and re-explore all the topics that I just kind of content bombed you with. So hopefully you've had a quick chance to process it in some capacity, and we'll go through and do it all again, and I'll work with you and explain what I'm pressing, when I'm pressing, and why I'm pressing, okay? This is also a great opportunity for you to complete your weekly activity number 2, which is of course, slightly more complex model. So last week, if you were submitting things like the shaded flat speakers, this week I'm looking more for like component-based pieces, something maybe with a bevel, something maybe with a little bit of roundness, okay? So like I said, for example, I think I'm just gonna make a quick wrench, just because it's already here, might as well. All right, and I can show you how we're gonna quickly break everything down and get started with making a block out for these complex shapes. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is open up PureRef. If you don't have PureRef already, I'd recommend installing it in some capacity. It's just a reference program for looking at images. Just take a screenshot of this. And then we can pop it in here. Now I can exit my slides. Now we can kind of just have this on the side. So I'm going to make a new file, and we'll kind of pop in. I'll make sure my screencast is on.
Question.
Yep.
Why do you opt for that instead of putting the image as the background in Blender itself?
It depends. This image is out of orthographic. It's in perspective, so there's no point really putting it in because I'm going to have to interpret it anyway. If it was an orthographic image, absolutely I'd be plopping it straight in and using it as a reference. I'll probably explore that next week. With something a little bit more complex. So now I've kind of got my object in the corner, might even shrink it up a little bit, still taking up a lot of space, and we can start to get an idea of how we want to model this. So we'll delete everything, kind of zoom in here. First and foremost, right, last week we looked at what kind of primitive shapes we want to use to make different things, but this is a conglomeration of random shapes. I'm not going to pick anything in particular, and if I'm not sure where to start, pick a square or a cube, I guess. If you're really not sure what's going on, pick a cube. Always pick a cube because you can probably find a portion of a cube somewhere on any model. For example, this portion where the handle would be underneath is roughly cube shaped. The next thing I'm going to do is I know this box is 2 meters by 2 meters, and I don't know about you, I don't even think I'd be able to pick up a wrench that's 2 meters by 2 meters. So I'm going to scale this down quite a bit. We can use the panel here and get a rough idea. So like 0.07 meters. All right, if we go 0.01 meters, that's 10 centimeters. I think that's maybe the size of the whole wrench. So I'm going to shrink it down a little bit more. It doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to be comparative to everything else around it. Okay, so here's my square that's roughly the same size as a wrench. Next, I know that we've got a portion here that's sort of thin, so we can start to scale things down. So I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm going to use SZ to thin it out, right? So scale, on S, and then Z is what allows me to scale on one axis. So I'm just scaling on Z here, shrinking it down. Then I'm going to hit S again, but this time Y, and I can work on just this Y axis. Okay, so now we're kind of creating the cross section of the red part of this wrench. Okay. You'll notice when I hit 7, that's for my top view. I'm going to be modeling this as if the wrench is flat on a table. So the top view is where we're going to see the wrench in its entirety, right? The front view is where we see the side. Side view is where we see the back. Which view you model this in is ultimately up to you, but you want to think about where this prop's going to be used in game. So I know that if I'm making a wrench like this, it's going to be used in one of two places. It's either in the character's hand or it's just an environment piece. Because I'm modeling it as an environment piece, I want to model it so that it's already flat as if it's sitting on a table, right? So if it's sitting flat on top of a table and I hit 7, I know I'm going to see the top of it. That way I don't have to rotate it in Engine. It's just drag and drop. Boom, done. If I was modeling this to be put in a character's hand, I would rotate it so that it's straight up and down, the same orientation that it would be in once it's in a character's hand, right? So I'm going to model it like this. As far as whether it's like this or like this, that really doesn't matter. It's just up to personal preference. I'm very used to pressing the X key when I'm modeling, so I model this way. So we have our little cross section here. I'm going to sort of extend this section out in both directions. I'm going to start adding extrusions to create our extension of our wrench here. So I'm going to extend all the way to the end first, and then we'll look at adding the extra cuts and loops after. So if we extend all the way out, we're picturing that this portion here is sort of up to here, and everything from here on is going to be the large head part. So we come in here. I'm going to expand this. So I'm going to press X, Y, because if I just press X, it's going to expand on all the axes. I just want to expand on the Y axis. It's going to be pretty flat all the way across. So expand on the Y axis. And then we're going to extrude again using E. Extrude out. And then I'm going to extrude out one more time. Scale one more time. Okay, we're slowly going to start building this shape in here. Now I'm going to introduce you to one of these new ones. Okay, you see we have a really smooth kind of curve happening here. I'm going to move this edge so we can use, I'm in wireframe mode this whole time, so I can just select this whole edge loop. Using GX, I can sort of move it sharper into here. Okay. And now we'll use one of our first new tools. So earlier in the slides, we talked about beveling. Okay. So beveling is going to round over any edge, and it works in different directions. So in this case, by moving this edge a little bit closer, we can take this now sharp angle, okay, and we're going to round it out to give us that smooth transition. So click our move tool, select, and using Control B, oh, that's my bad. It's actually Control B, not just B. That's a hotkey. So Control B, you'll see we start to get some edges to make that smooth transition. So we can add just a couple here. Remember, we're trying to work as low as possible. We can always add more later. So let's do something like this. Okay. Now I want to get this nice round part up here. I'm going to do something similar-ish. We'll push this part up. Maybe even make this bigger. And then Control B again. Okay. So now we've got a giant kind of spoon looking thing, but you can see where we're making this top edge here. So we've got our rough shape of our top edge modeled out. At the same time, we've used quads everywhere. So all of these are still quads, which is good, and it makes it easier for us to work on it. We can always delete the extra geometry later. So I'm gonna hit Control R here to add an edge loop down the middle. So you see if I hover on this edge, it's going to extend in that direction that I'm hovering. So imagine the middle here, if I hover this way, it'll go that way. If I hover this way, it'll go that way. So we can click and then right click to drop that edge loop right in the middle. Okay, perfect. Now what we can do is I'm going to go back into wireframe mode by pressing Z. So back into wireframe. This is going to be a rough approximation of our little cutout here. So let's just grab these bits. I'm going to press X. And I'm going to delete faces. Okay. But now we're left with a couple problems. There's this one that's floating, right? Super simple. We're just going to delete that one and use that F bind from earlier, right? So F2 to just quickly close those faces. Okay, right. Still just an approximation for now. We're working bit by bit, and we'll get into the more intricate stuff later. So now we know that this piece is actually quite a bit higher up than the middle. Right now we just got it in the middle. That's where our edge loop was made. So we can go back into wireframe and move this up. I'm going to hit G and then Y, and we'll kind of move this up. Okay. And now we have a much better approximation of this shape here. Okay. Earlier I talked about the P key, but we didn't really have a great example of when we would use something like that. This piece here, right, is going to be identical to this piece here as far as where they meet. So we can just select these two faces. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate them. So Shift D is the duplicate key. Shift D to duplicate them. You can see I've got an extra face here. I'm going to right click so it goes back to where it was. So now there's two faces there, right? Don't be fooled, there's two. And before unselecting them, I'm going to hit P. And I can separate by selection. So if I hit P, separate by selection, I now have a new piece here. This method is called paneling. So if I select this now, I can extrude it out, and I know that it's lining up perfectly in here where I want it to, and then I can bend it in to approximate sort of this piece. Okay, and we can move it down a little bit. But you see when I select it in object mode, it is its own object, totally separate. All right. Let's take this part back a bit. And we're going to work on the larger details first. So I'm ignoring the holes for right now. I'm ignoring this indent. I'm ignoring the way this shading and these tiny little gaps. I'm just working on the big pieces. So I want to get this rounded end here. We see here that we have a hole. So we know that our target, we kind of need to make something that looks like this. Right? This is the shape we looked at earlier when I was demonstrating loop tools. So we want to kind of get this kind of shape going where we have 8 vertices all in a row. 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And if we have those 8 vertices, we know that we can create a circle, which we know we need to do later. So we're planning ahead a little bit. A couple ways to go about this. You could try and extrude, scale, extrude, scale, and try and get a nice round shape, which is possible, but kind of annoying. Alternatively, we can start connecting different meshes. So I can add a new cylinder. Okay. And I'm going to cut it down to 8. Right, because 8's what we're working with. We're working at a very low level right now. We might add more later. On this cylinder, I can delete these bits, and I'm left with what looks like the end of my wrench. We need these faces, though, to line up with these ones, and these ones to line up with these ones. So we'll extend using E and then X to just extend on the X axis. Okay. And then I'm going to use snapping, right? So we snap with active vertex. And if I take this top edge, I can snap it right down. Take this bottom edge, I can snap it right up. And now I can connect all of this together. So we're going to move this in. What I did here? So I want these faces, or these top bits, to line up so I can connect these into one solid mesh. But just eyeballing that, you're never guaranteed to be right. So a quick way to guarantee that you're level is to go up here to the snapping tool in the top, or hit Shift-Tab. By default, it's set to closest. There's an issue with closest, though. If I was going to snap this in object mode to this part here, you see it's not snapping where my origin is, that yellow dot. It's because it's just calculating the closest vertices on this mesh and then snapping that. Honestly, I've never really found a use for closest, because if you select active, then you can snap from exactly where you want to every time. So I actually have a hotkey that just immediately goes into active mode. So we click active. Now you'll see it snapping with that origin point. Or in edit mode, it snaps with whatever vertex you've selected last. So that's why there's that one white vertex. That's how you know what you've selected most recently. So if I now hit G and hover over this edge, it'll snap to it. If I hit G and Z, it'll just snap on that axis. So G to snap to that vertex I'm hovering, and Z to snap specifically to that height. So I can do that for the top and the bottom. And now I know it's perfectly level. I can use F to just quickly fill this in, quite simply, just so we can connect it real quick, right? So now I can select all of this, and by selecting this vertex, I can snap it right to the end of my other mesh. But there is one problem, and that's these are still two separate objects. So we learned P to separate. The other key we're going to learn quickly is J. It's not in the slides, but if you're going to P, you probably also want a J. There's a Control J. Control J, sorry. Control J joins different objects into one. So if I Control J, they're now one mesh again, right? So if in object mode, we can see it's one mesh. I can then hit A, M, and merge by distance, right? So our problem solving step. And you'll see it'll remove the vertices and combine these into one solid whole mesh. So this is just a way to get, you know, a nice round shape here, where otherwise it might have been a little bit more complicated to do so. Okay. And we can finish by using J to close these gaps. So we'll delete this face and make a new one. Right, we have a fake face here right now, so we think that it's connected, but it's not. If I move it, you can see it's not actually connected. So we just learned about fake faces. So my solution is I'm just going to delete that face and make a new one. And then we can rebuild using J to join these vertices. Okay. I'm going to make another cut here, right? So I've been using J. So if I press J, it makes a cut from one vertex to another. Or if you press K, you can specifically cut using the knife tool. And I can connect two vertices that way. All right. Everybody still with me? No. Where are we lost? How far back? Joining objects together? Still on the magnet thing. Okay, that's fine. This is the stuff I need to know so I can split off to a separate example and go into depth what exactly it is that I'm doing with these tools. So I'm going to make a couple new just random objects real quick, and we'll just move them over. And yeah, that should do it. So I've got 3 just random objects here. And I want all 3 of these objects to have the same height. I want this top face to be even for all of them, right? Let's just say that's what I'm working on. I can move this down, right? And I can move this down, right? And just hope that it's level. But I want it to be perfectly flat. So what we can use is a snapping tool, which allows us to snap to a variety of different things. By default, it's set to increment. And if you see this grid in the background, when I've set to increment, it'll snap to the different parts of the grid. This is very similar to how tools work in Unity. If you have the snapping turned on in Unity, this is how it works. Here, though, we have other options. We can snap via face, via vertex, via edge. So in our case, we're going to use vertex. That's what we use most of the time. And what that means is that whatever vertices we have selected, if I click G, I move them, right? And if I hover another vertex, it's just going to snap to them, right? And like we learned about G, it's moving it in all 3 axes. So if I snap it to here, you'll see it's moving all of those right to that vertex. I could snap it to this vertex, that vertex, this vertex, that vertex. But I don't want to snap the entire face to that vertex. I just want to move it to the same height. So just like if I wasn't snapping, if I hit G and Z, I only move on the Z axis, right? This also carries over to the snapping. So if I hover now, instead of moving the whole face to the vertex, it's just moving it to the Z axis of that vertex. So I snap here, I can snap to the bottom, I can snap to this one, I can snap to this one. So now that I've taken this top face and I'm snapping to this vertice, I know that this is perfectly level, right? Whereas my eyes could never do that. Here, we can make it perfectly level. So this could be all the way down here. G, Z, snap. Snap it here, it is now perfectly level. So all 3 of my objects are perfectly level, just like I want them to be. This comes in handy often. Here's another example. Let's say I've got some kind of corner. Let's say I want this particular rectangle size for some particular reason, I don't know, in my corner of every part of the object. I could do it like this and just hope that I'm adding them and making them even. But we can use this concept of snapping to make sure that it's all identical by using proxies. So if I duplicate this face now, we can take it and snap it to a corner. And now when I add my edge loop, G, X, right, to move it on the X-axis, and I still have snapping on, I could snap it to this extra piece I made, and I know that it is the exact same as this other one. I can do the exact same thing down here. So I can take this, snap it, add an edge loop, snap it.
Marcus, when sort of send the center of the new object back out rather than like the active?
In object mode or in edit mode? If you're snapping in object mode, it is different. It uses the origin point. So this little yellow dot is the origin point.
Yeah.
So if you're snapping in object mode, it's going to snap to that. If we're snapping a face like this for a proxy, if I'm in face mode, it's going to snap the whole face. But if I'm in vertex mode, I can pick which vertex I want by selecting it last. So if I want this vertex to snap, that does it. If I want this vertex to snap, it snaps like that. So it's super powerful to be able to select exactly which vertex you want to snap where and go from there. Okay. All right. So now I've got all of these four corners identical using the snapper.
How come when you select one vertex and then snap it, it moves the whole object instead of just the vertex?
I have all of it selected. So anything that's orange is selected,
Okay.
and then the white is extra selected. That's like most recent selection. So I'm unclicking a corner, I'm holding shift still, and I'm re-clicking it to make it the most recent selection, and that's why it's turning white. If I just pick this one, then yeah, it'll just snap the one.
Do you unclick and then re-click it to select that one corner?
Yeah, if you shift click a corner, it'll uncheck the corner, and then shift click again to reselect the corner. Right? So I'm basically just double clicking when I want to select a certain corner. Snapping. Yep. Okay. So we've snapped our cylindrical mesh to our existing, what we had over here. Okay. Hopefully that sort of helps with getting lost on the magnet stuff. From here, it's a little bit hard to tell, but we've created that shape that we were looking for earlier. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertices. So I can select the top and the bottom and inset, right? And then right click to find loop tools, which we installed earlier, and circle. And now I've got a circle where we had a square, right? So just like the demo I showed earlier, we're looking for that same pattern. And we can do the exact same thing. Select this face, left click, bridge. Now I have a hole. Okay. If we want to shrink it, we can shrink it down a bit. If we want to shrink the entire thing, we can shrink that a bit. Okay. Still with me? Kind of, sort of? All right. This bit's a bit confusing, making the hole there. Let's try a different example for joining meshes together. So I'm going to make this new cube. Just move it up. And I want to make a shape that's like this. I want it to be round on the top. What I can do is make a cylinder, right? And yeah, a semi-cylinder. I'm going to delete half of it. So we go and select the bottom half of this, right? Right now it's a full cylinder. If I delete half of it, I'm left with just the roof part. If I select everything with A, and I'm going to use that same trick we just did. So select everything with A, double click a vertex. So now you'll see this vertex. It's really hard to see probably on the projector, but now this vertex is white, which means when I move with the snapping tool, I'm going to snap the entire object to one of these corners. So if I snap to this corner, I know I can combine these two meshes super simply. Control J.
Marcus, sorry, can you go back to the main connection? My mesh was all fucked up and I don't know where I do it.
Making which part?
The action did for this pieces.
Yeah, it's more or less the same example. So I have one object that's a cylinder, and one object that's the square. So this is the same thing I did on the wrench. A just much smaller version. And if I select everything, double click this vertex, right, and use snapping, it snaps the whole object. So now this vertice on this and this vertice on the cube are in the same place. On this corner, they're in the same place. On this corner, they're in the same place. And on this corner, they're in the same place. So when I join them and merge by distance, it'll create one cohesive mesh. So Control J. We tab in edit mode, we'll see it's still two separate pieces technically. But we know that there are multiple vertices in this spot, right? There's one for the top piece and one for the bottom. If we merge, it becomes one cohesive mesh. Okay. And then we can use F to fill it in. Okay. So let me delete this part again, then we'll run through it a second time. I'm going to add a cylinder, right? Make sure it's at 8 sides. And then we're going to shrink it down to fit our mesh. Okay. For this part, we can just kind of scale with our eyeballs until it's pretty close. So once it's close enough, we know it'll merge. We can move it off to the side. If I delete half of this cylinder, now we just need to connect this bit to this bit and this bit to this bit. So we'll extrude it with E. And we can snap on the x-axis to our existing mesh. So now we're snapped on the x-axis, same thing for the z. We're going to snap down, right? We have this edge, this vertice selected, Shift, Z, snap down. Select this bottom loop, Z, snap up. Okay, but they're still two separate objects. We can hit Control J. M, merge by distance. It's now one object. So now everything is cohesive, but we have a nice round end to our wrench.
Marcus, I'm having paper shoulders of how you're connecting that involves like with this magnet. Because every time I do this, the object keeps shifting around. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
So if your object is shifting, everything I'm doing with the magnet is in edit mode.
Yeah.
Okay, yep. If your object is shifting, you probably have closest set.
No, it's an active.
You have active set, and you're selecting just the top edge,
Yeah.
and you move, and it moves the entire object.
Yeah, it doesn't like connect to it. That's the thing. It's not. I don't know what's up. I don't know.
Are you in vertex mode?
Yeah.
So snap to vertex mode.
Yeah.
So if you pick a vertex like this and snap it, will it go towards it?
Yeah, it will.
Okay.
But the other side is not going to
Oh, that part. Yeah, that part is this bit here. If I remake this, I'm moving this cylinder and I'm just eyeballing the scale until it fits. So we come in here, right? Now I know it's going to snap because I've scaled it down in a way where it's going to merge. Okay, so now it's fine for me to just extrude this out, right? There is a little bit of prep. You can't just spawn any random cylinder of any random size and expect it to connect, right? It still needs to be the same size on at least one of the axes before you go and connect the other two. So it's the same on the y-axis already. I'm just worrying about the x-axis and the z-axis. So z
You're right. It's just
and x. Okay. I'll do it one more time, so if you're still a little bit confused, I would just watch this bit and then try again after, and then hopefully that helps your problem. Shift A to make a mesh. Cylinder, right? I'm going to start scaling it down bit by bit. I'm going to go into wireframe mode so I can see when it's the same width as my wrench. So now I know it's the same width as my wrench, right? It's lined up. Yep.
Could you also select, like, say all of that, but have the top vertex as your active element and snap to edge on the z-axis while holding scale, while doing your scale key to, like, actually snap it to the same size?
It's snap on the Z for right now, but
Or
for
sorry, my bad, not Z. Because I was looking top down.
oh, the y-axis.
Yeah, Y.
I don't believe so. It doesn't work quite like that for scaling. It's more of a thing for, let's see, it's still
Try
just
having edge as your top vertex. I just want to like be able to see this.
what happens is it's because the scaling is happening based on your mouse movement, it's independent of sort of the geometry space. It's just how far your mouse has moved. So if I snap to like, I can still, even with this selected, it's still just how far away my mouse gets. So that's why by default, you'll see this is off, it's just move.
Okay.
It's mostly meant for that way. So
Maybe it's because I just did an operation where it was vertex to vertex or something, but I just did scale recently, like exactly that, except with vertex to vertex and it worked.
just vertex to vertex, maybe. I've never done it that way personally. For this, it's always just a sort of eyeball. And once we're close enough, we know it'll merge by distance later. Okay, so here we are. I've now got a cylinder and my wrench, but these top faces need to be the same. So I'm going to select the top face, make sure my snapping is on. I'm in edit mode now. And now when I snap, I know that this face is even. All right. Can do the exact same thing to the bottom, snap. Now we can take this whole mesh, just kind of move it to the end, delete half of it, and we know that this bit should be even, more or less, along here. It's not going to be perfect, but it's close enough that when we merge, it'll merge together. So let's grab these ends and hit E to extrude, X, and snap. Right, so now that's right on the end. So now it's perfectly lined up. If I select both objects and hit Control J, it'll combine them object-wise, but not mesh-wise. So if I hit L, they're still separate. Right? They're one object. If I go to object mode, it's one object. I can move it around all together. But they're two current meshes. To fix this, we're going to select everything. I'm going to hit M and merge by distance, which is going to take the vertices that are overlapping each other and combine them. So merge by distance, you'll see down here, remove 0. So that means they were too far away. We'll just try again. and increase the threshold. So we'll get rid of one of the zeros. And now you see it says removed 4 vertices, so we know that it connected. And now if I press L, it will select the whole object. If I select this edge, it moves both parts. It's all one mesh at this point. Okay, and then we can close everything up. Same thing on the bottom. Just select the edge loop, press F to make a big face, and then close it with J. J, J. For the hole, I'm just going to select these faces, inset, and we have 8 all the way around. So if I was to make it into a circle, we'll get a nice circle. Okay. Grab our circles from either side and bridge. All right, and we have a base for the wrench.
Sorry. How do you make the inset?
The inset? I.
No, yeah, like, how do you make the circle? Like, can you redo it? Because I was still, like, fixing it.
Yep. So I use I here to get our 8 vertices set up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then by selecting both of the faces and using loop tools to circle, it creates a circle. It's a little skewed, so I'm just going to rotate it with R to orient it a bit better. And then also using loop tools, I can right-click loop tools bridge, and the bridge will connect those 2 faces through the mesh. And we end up with the hole. Okay. Then we can sort of scale the hole down if it's too big. Perfect. If you feel like you've fallen too far behind, that's okay. What I'd recommend you do in that case is to watch for now, to try and pick up things here and there, and then attempt it afterwards on your own, and I will help you much more directly that way. So to get this next part, I'm going to move on just for now, and then if you have questions about that earlier stuff, we'll come back to it. But for this next part, I want to break off where the handle would be. So I'm just going to Control R to make a new edge loop, Control B to bevel it, and then reduce it down to 1 segment using my mouse wheel. And then this way, we just get a boundary box on either side for where our handle can be. Somewhere like here looks right, and then we'll take this edge and kind of move it out of the way, move it close to where it's supposed to be. And I'm not going to do the crazy angle stuff here just to keep it simple for you guys, so we'll just take this piece. And remember that this doesn't need to exist in between here. This is going to be covered by the handle, so I'm not going to duplicate this and press P. I'm just going to press P. So now we've got a totally separate piece here where the handle is. All right? And we can go from here. So we know from looking at it, this handle's a little bit round on the sides. I'm going to just grab it, scale it up a bit. But I don't want to scale it on all the axes. So I'm going to hit Shift X, and now it's only going to scale on Z and Y. Okay. We'll select the outside corners. So I'm just clicking and then shift clicking all the different corners. And then by using bevel again, we can sort of round that bit out. Okay, a rounder kind of handle. And then we'll do this same top and bottom. Quick bevel. Quick bevel. There's one more thing about the handle, and that's that the edge kind of goes like this. But we can't do that with the amount of geometry we have right now because there's nothing for us to pull up to that edge. So we have to add loop cuts. So when I control R, we also have the option of scrolling up and down. And by scrolling up, we can add, let's say, 3 edge loops. And by scaling these, we can create that rounder shape. Okay. Make a face on either end. And now we have sort of the workings of a handle. It's been a little bit exaggerated. Okay. At this point, we have enough to think about the shading because we can see along the edges here, it's all flat shaded. So I'm going to right click and shade auto smooth. All right. And now we have something a little bit better to look at. But we'll see in here, these faces, if we remember how it works, these angles are too sharp. They're sharper than the 30-degree default that comes with this object. So we have to increase except it's decided it doesn't want to show up for some reason. Oh, I accidentally opened this in Blender 4.0, that's why, it's fine. So we just have to increase this from 30 to 45, right? And so now these edges that were too sharp before, we go up to 50. Now they're rounded out. Okay. Is everybody lost? Is anybody not lost?
Found.
One person's found. How about everybody else?
I'm tired.
That's fair too. This is a late class. It's unfortunate, but
Hungry, I haven't eaten dinner.
yeah, that's why I typically want to try and get us out by like 7:30.
What's like 30 minutes for you?
So what I think we'll do here is we've got 40 minutes left. I'll bomb through quickly how I'd approach something like these holes. It's going to be the exact same technique as this hole here. Hopefully by seeing it happen 3 more times, you'll kind of get a grasp of the different things happening here. That could happen quickly, and then I'll focus on helping you specifically with the problems you have. We'll go over any particular issues you've got or got caught up on. All right. So we're going to do the exact same thing for all of these different pieces really quickly. I've got my square hole here. We'll go in, we'll select, inset, extrude down a little bit. Okay. Now we can add a couple extra edges. Inset, inset, right? We're looking for this same pattern to turn into a circle. Circle, circle. Make this one smaller, make this one not so small. Select on both sides and bridge. Select on both sides and bridge. Okay, we have our holes. On this other side, it's a little bit more complicated.
Wait, but Marcus, when we make those holes, we would have to like make those circles on both sides, right? Because you have the mirror image.
Yeah, you would use the mirror modifier.
So without that, how do you get them to be like same size? Like we didn't get it so that the top and bottom is the same size.
I'll show you this. You'd use the mirror modifier. So what this is going to do is it mirrors the work on the top on the bottom.
Is that already like in Blender?
This is in Blender. This is just in Blender. This is how it works in Blender. Yeah, yeah. So if you add a modifier here, you have a little stack. You can add different things. One of them is a mirror modifier. So if we cut our object in half, right? So I've deleted the bottom half of the object because it's the same as the top. The mirror modifier lets us mirror that over to the bottom, so we don't have to do the same amount of work on the bottom too. So now if I, let's say, delete these faces, you'll see the hole opens up. And now we can just connect them. Yep.
In the actual shape, those faces would be hexagonal.
They would be, yeah. For a quick demo purpose, I think this is all right. Let's make it hexagonal. It'd be the same thing, just instead of going for 8 sides, you would just go for 6. And when you use the circle tool, it'll make a hexagon because that's the best it can do. Okay, and then the other hole that's in front of it, real quick, same thing. We would just make a hole. And we could just kind of call this done for the sake of demo.
Marcus, can you redo that part? Because, I missed some part of your tutorial.
Yeah. I just wanted to blow through that part quickly because I understand we're getting a little bit too far away here. So I'll leave it at that in the recording. And then for this bit, so on the recording there for week 2. And then for the rest of this, we'll kind of go over the issues that we have or what we kind of got lost on.